Okay, in this video we're going to pick up where we left off with the first one, and we're going to graph the parabolas that are in vertex form. And so let's just take a look at the steps. You should tape these down in your notes. We're still in section 2.1, so you don't need to do anything to the table of contents. I did alter step 3 a little bit. You can leave it like it is, and I'll explain this in further detail when we get to this step in a example problem, but if you want to alter it, you're fine. If you don't, you can just leave it the same. So let's take a look at each step. We're going to identify the vertex and plot it on the graph. We're going to draw the axis of symmetry. We're going to set up a table of values. We're going to plot those points and the reflection points, and then we're going to sketch the graph. So let's just take a look at this first example, and again, you should tape this down in your notes now. So number 1, following the steps, we will start with identifying the vertex, and the vertex again is HK. X misbehaved, so we know it's going to be -2, 4, and we will plot that point. Next, we want to draw the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is simply the x-coordinate. It's a line that goes through this x-coordinate, so it's x equals -2. And third, this is where we have some changes in the instructions, but we want to choose at least 2 points. And the reason why I said to the left, or maybe I said to the right, is I want you to get the increments from the vertex. I want those increments to be different from each other. So let me just show you by example. So I'm going to start by putting that vertex right there in the middle. And I'm going to choose some x values that are very close to -2. So my first option would be to go with -3. Okay, they're buddies, they're right next to each other. Notice that the increment between these two is 1. Okay, now I'm going to go to the right of -2. What I don't want to do is choose -1 because it's 1 increment, and I want it to be a different increment, and you'll see why here in a second. So I'm going to go with 0, and 0 is 2 units away from -2. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply substitute those 2 values into this equation and find the y value. Okay, that's my little dog in the background. Can you hear his feet? He's trying to jump up on the couch. Poppy. Anyway, all right, so here we go. Okay, so we're going to take out the x coordinate, and we're going to plug in the -3. And then you just follow order of operations there to find out the y value. So we'll start with simplifying what's inside the parentheses, squaring that number, and adding 4 to it, and we get 6. All right, next we're going to do the same thing, only we're going to substitute in a 0. So I'm going to erase all this and put in a 0 for x. And I'm going to follow order of operations, square that 2, multiply and add, and we get 12. All right, so the next step is to plot these points and the reflection points. So I'm going to start with -3, 6. That's right here. And its reflection point is 1 increment to the right. It's 1 increment from that axis of symmetry, so it's going to be 1 increment to the right. So let's back up. If I had have chosen -1 over here, which is also 1 increment from -2, just like -3 is 1 increment from -2, then all I would have gotten was the reflection point. And I really want to build this graph. I want to see the outline of it a little bit better. So by choosing different increments, you will get more points. So the next thing I'm going to do is plot 0, 12. And 0, 12 also has a reflection point. As you can see, we're now 2 increments away, so we're going to need to jump 2 increments to the left. And there's our point. Now we're just going to sketch the graph. And when you sketch this graph, you just need to make sure that it's a little bit more rounded here at the bottom. You don't want it to look like an absolute value graph, so there should be no sharp point there. It's kind of difficult to do. You got to have some practice with it, so just do your best. All right, let's take a look at one more, and then I'll have you guys do the rest for class. The next time we meet, you should have those done. So we're going to begin with the same steps. We're going to identify the vertex and plot it. We're also going to draw the axis of symmetry, which is the same. Again, I want to point out that the x value of your coordinate is also going to play into the axis of symmetry. Now this is a line. I know it doesn't look like a line, it looks like an answer, but it is actually the equation of a vertical line. So we're going to draw that line. It goes straight through that vertex. They share the same real estate there. And so now let's go ahead and build a table. And I'm going to start with putting my vertex right there in the middle. And I'm going to choose a point to the left. Let's see, how many increments was that? Okay, it was 3 increments. And this one is 2 increments. And I'm going to start out with my template, remove the x and put in a 1, follow order of operations, get a -3, half of 9. I know some of you are thinking, oh no, fractions, but you know, live with it, you can do it. You can do it. All right, half of 9 is 4.5, plus 1 is 5.5. And you'll see that the way that this graph paper is structured, it's not going to be difficult to graph that. Okay, next, let's take a look at our next point. We chose the x value of 6, and when we go through this process of simplification, the y value is 3. And now we're going to plot the first point. Ooh, look how far over that is. So if we count, and notice that these are all by halves, look at the scale. We go 1, 2, 3. It's actually 6 squares to the left, and you'll notice that we only have 4 squares here, and sometimes this happens when graph paper is provided, so we really can't do a reflection point unless we improvise. So I could kind of put it right there, and that's kind of an improvise. Next, what I want to do is let's just graph our second point. It's going to be here, and you're going to count the number of units away from the axis of symmetry, and then you're going to go over here and plot the same number of increments, and there it is. And then you're going to sketch that graph. Okay, so there's 2 more graphs, and I want you to try follow these steps. I will give you a heads up that negative that precedes each of those questions means that the graph is going to go down instead of up. So let's see how you can do with that. All right, we'll see you in class.